Well, thank you, everyone. I hope you had a nice break, or at least enough time to, visit the facilities and explore Jamyang Library and all that. Depending on what your body most needed in that moment, your body and mind. And so our previous session was the shortest one, both because we needed to make some preliminary announcements in the very beginning, and then that whole electricity debacle. But then the meditations we actually did will stay with us for the rest of today if we're doing all the remaining sessions, because the two qualities that we were working on there would be fairly important to all the other meditations and all the other practices. So the first thing we did was we played with the idea of relaxation, really, in this case using the breath, but that's not obligatory. There are other ways to relax. And yet relaxation itself remains a very important part of practice, just providing that foundation for any other type of meditation that we might want to do. And then in the second practice, we explored this kind of fascinating, at least it's fascinating to me, quality of tenderness, or tsewa. Once again, it is a quality that is constantly referred to, at least in the Tibetan tradition, but it's not a quality that's not necessarily described in terms of, well, how do I cultivate that? And if I, for some reason, lose touch with my ability to care and to be tender towards myself and others, how do I fix that? Is there something that can be done? Yes, lots of recommendations exist there, but one of the most quintessential ones is just to reconnect to this tender touch of awareness in this case. Practice with it, rest in it, offer it to ourselves, eventually offer it to others. And through that, through just repeating these little tours into the land of tenderness, the channel through which tenderness flows becomes more and more wide. We have more and more access to it. And this is where eventually we start feeling enough tenderness for us to mold that, shape that into the immeasurable qualities of loving kindness, compassion, empathetic joy, and equanimity. So for the rest of today, we will be playing with those, and all of those could be described as crystallizations of the foundational ability to care, to be non-indifferent, to be tender, to be affectionate. Why they are described as crystallizations is because they are pretty contextual. They arise within a specific context as our heart's response to either ourselves in different types of situations or to other beings that we encounter that once again experience different types of situations. So between the four immeasurables, and four immeasurables really is a term of the Sanskrit tradition, and the Tibetan tradition is a branch of that. Amongst the four immeasurables, or when the four immeasurables are described, it is sometimes said that that loving kindness is kind of a default quality that we extend to others when we see them in a neutral situation, and the default quality that we offer to ourselves when we are ourselves in a sort of neutral situation. Compassion is our response to suffering, either our own or that of others. Empathetic joy is our response once we have trained in it properly. Empathetic joy becomes our habitual response to anyone experiencing good-natured happiness and joy. And finally, equanimity, which is described in really different ways in different traditions, can be seen as a balancing element that brings it all together and helps us maintain, first of all, a certain coherence with regards to this entire system, and also equal openness with regards to different types of beings. So equanimity makes sure that we are not too limited in our ability to offer loving kindness, compassion, and empathetic joy, and by extension also tenderness, to all who live, while absolutely not standing in the way of us making valid judgments when it comes to building healthy boundaries and so forth. So we'll start with loving kindness, and then each subsequent session will be on the remaining immeasurables. We'll play with compassion, we'll play with empathetic joy, and we'll conclude today with an exploration of equanimity. So for loving kindness, I think it's probably safe to assume that many people in the room and online would have done some practice of it. But because I want to make sure everyone's feeling comfortable with these terms, it would be nice to kind of offer a definition to them, at least to a certain degree. So if you're already familiar with it all, and you probably are better than me, I apologize in advance. I'm saying it as if there were some beginners in the room or people who are relatively not familiar with these practices. So for tenderness, which is a state that precedes the immeasurables, for that state of tsewa, or affection and warmth or caring, that is described as our foundational non-indifference that can be extended to ourselves and to other sentient beings. So it's a very primal quality, pre-verbal certainly, available to at least, we can say, all mammals, but beyond that probably to all sentient beings in one way or another. And it's just ability to be not indifferent. It's just this ability to be warm-hearted, to care. Then out of that grows loving kindness. Loving kindness is defined as a wish for beings to be happy and have the causes of happiness. So it's a wish. It's therefore not an emotion per se, at least not in the way that emotions are described in the emotional psychology of Paul Ekman and his colleagues. It's a conative, an expression of our conative function. And conation, or conative functioning, in psychology is described as our ability to desire, to wish, to aspire. So when we're playing with loving kindness, when we're working on loving kindness, we're practicing loving kindness, we're dealing with this ability to desire. We're using our desire energy, or a wishing energy, and we're molding it in a very special way. We're giving it the shape of this wish for ourselves and eventually for all other beings to be happy. Loving kindness becomes immeasurable, ergo the name, the four immeasurables, when it is equally extended to all who live. And that's a very, very advanced thing to accomplish. We're probably, at least for me, not yet there, but we can aspire for that. And because of this aspirational naming principle, we refer to it as one of the four immeasurables, even though in the initial stages of practice, it's anything but immeasurable. And then another thing that arises with regards to all of it, and this is where our first practice is coming in, another thing that's coming into all of that is that there are, of course, different ideas about happiness, different definitions of happiness. People think of happiness in different ways, and it is very common when one voices the definition of loving kindness for someone, at least for someone who's not been studying in the Tibetan tradition with all of its definitions and numbered lists and the rest of that. It's very common for someone to say, well, what is happiness that we're aspiring for here? Because what is happiness for me might not necessarily be happiness for my friend Bob over here. So what are we doing? And then the common response to that is to say, well, first of all, Buddhism does have an umbrella definition of happiness. And that definition goes like this. Happiness is any state that we want to extend when we're experiencing it, and any state that we want to come back to when we're not experiencing it. So if we're feeling it now and we want to extend it, let's say I'm feeling the bliss of eating mango sorbet. If I want to extend that for a little while longer, for that moment, that is one of the types of happiness for me. If I'm thinking of eating mango sorbet, even though I'm not actively consuming it now, and I want to experience that again, once again, for me, the consumption of mango sorbet and the associated experiences, physical and mental, that's one of the types of happiness. But then we could say, well, there are probably then also many destructive types of happiness or non-sustainable types of happiness, because some people crave to feel this or that, but it's really damaging for their body or maybe for the entire planet if that type of consumption is associated with environmental destruction. Once again, what are we doing here? And this is where, once again, these theories of happiness, kind of simultaneously developed by the Greeks and the Indians, say or explain to us that there are at least two major types of happiness that we could consider. One of them has to do with us consuming something from the outside. That's what's known as hedonic happiness in the Greek tradition, happiness that comes from literally imbibing something, putting something into ourselves, bringing something close to ourselves, enjoying something from the outside. And then the other type of happiness, which is referred to as eudaimonic well-being or happiness in the Greek tradition, or as genuine happiness, yangdakpe dewa, in the Tibetan cultural tradition. That's the happiness that comes from within. So when we're offering loving kindness to ourselves and to others, one really helpful way to word what is it that we're wishing for ourselves and others is to say, for all beings, including all our fellow humans, certainly, we want for them to have a sustainable and dignified level of hedonic happiness. So food, shelter, sensory pleasures, the companionship, meaningful companionship of others, access to education, medical care. These are all things that the Buddha listed as some of our foundational needs or foundational medicinal substances that we do need to maintain our life. So it's great if everyone has a dignified, sustainable level of that. But beyond that, we can wish for all beings to have an unlimited amount of inner well-being that can be cultivated or discovered through mind training, essentially, through the cultivation of the best, most beautiful qualities of our heart and mind. So that's something we can play with as a working hypothesis, integrating it into our practices of loving kindness. But it is sometimes also helpful to, before we embark on this whole journey of loving kindness, to do a practice in which we explore our own personal current vision of genuine well-being for ourselves. And this is where there is a wonderful practice that was compiled by Lama Alan Wallace, familiar to many people in the room, probably as one of the most eminent Tibetan Buddhist translators of our time. And that this practice combines loving kindness for ourselves with what's known as cognitive exploration. Once again, an exploration of our entire ability to desire, to wish, to aspire. So in this practice, we will explore 4 questions, and then we'll activate loving kindness with regards to each of the questions. And then at the end of this session, I will put up these 4 sessions on the slide again. So if you want, you can take a picture of them, you can write them down, or you can actively journal on them during the break. So that's something that will be done. So don't worry about the questions now. You don't need to take notes during the meditation itself. The questions will be there, and also all the recordings and so forth. So just enjoy the meditation, and just remember that there are no wrong answers here. And even if nothing particular comes up with regards to any of the questions or one of them, not to worry, as long as we have that element of loving kindness there where we wish, oh, indeed, may I find some of that happiness. That's perfect already. We're already training in loving kindness. So once again, we can stretch a little bit, move around if necessary, assume a comfortable stationary position, find all the types of physical support that we might need with all the cushions and blankets and all of that. And then eventually we can transition into our first meditation for the session. Finding a comfortable stationary position, adjusting the different parts of the body if necessary, and then allowing our awareness to descend into the depths of our body. Once again, mentally touching the ground that is holding us, and an acknowledgement of our intimate connection with the earth and with the entirety of interdependence. And allowing the ground that is holding us to inspire the relaxation response in our body, inviting a wave of relaxation that gradually expands through our body, starting with our feet and toes. So we will once again perform an abbreviated body scan, spending some time with our feet and toes, letting go of all the restlessness there. And then our entire lower half, from our waist down. Our legs, our pelvic floor. Then finding that sense of restfulness in our torso, our shoulders, our hands and fingers. And then finally arriving at our face, exploring the sensations and also just enjoying the very fact that we can be aware of our facial muscles, of the experiences in our face. Therefore, recognizing that we are alive and we do have this precious opportunity to cultivate or uncover the best qualities that are available to us, including the quality of loving kindness. And then with that, we allow our body to continue resting naturally, continue breathing in a natural rhythm, in a natural, uncontrived way. And with the help of our mind and its creative ability, sometimes referred to as the mind's luminosity, we will gradually explore 4 questions, using each one to offer some loving kindness to ourselves. The first question there is, how do I personally envision my own genuine flourishing? The true type of happiness and well-being that I would like to eventually realize. Knowing that this genuine well-being would not be limited to simply the hedonic aspects of happiness. There would also be that inner element to it. And as we present this question to our mind, we can allow our mind to be creative with it, to bring us a vision or a general understanding or a general idea of this flourishing and well-being that we would like to eventually experience. And then when that vision or general idea comes to us, and it doesn't need to be detailed, as long as we have some general feeling about it, we can start offering loving kindness to ourselves by simply wishing, may it be so. May I realize this genuine well-being. And then we rest with that wish, breathing life into it, if we want to, with each natural exhalation. May it be so. May I realize this genuine well-being. Then we explore the second question, which is, what types of support and what resources do I need to receive from the world around me in order to realize this vision of genuine flourishing? What types of assistance do I really need? And once again, this is where we can respond with a vision or with some thoughts. And once we have something to rely on, even if it's just a general feeling of us wanting to be supported and held, we can respond to that with the aspiration of loving kindness, wishing, may it be so. May I receive and accept all the support that I truly need, all the help, all the types of resources. And once again, we rest with that wish, strengthening it with each new cycle of breathing. And if we want, we can even imagine that we are attracting these types of support to ourselves, bringing them into our domain of lived experience. Therefore, also becoming open to the assistance of others. For the third question, we explore the idea of changing in order to be happy. So the question is, how do I need to change in order to realize this genuine well-being that I would like to experience? How do my habits need to change? What do I need to release? What do I need to uncover to a greater degree? And once again, something specific might come to mind, or there might be just a general idea of this evolution that's necessary. And this is where we can once again respond with loving kindness, wishing, may it be so. May I be able to transform, making one step after another, not because I don't accept myself, but in terms of uncovering my greatest potential. Opening up like a flower, may it be so. And then for the final question, asking ourselves, what could be the most meaningful gift that I could share with my communities and the world in general? What would I like to offer to the world? And then wishing, may it be so. May I succeed in sharing this gift. Imagining with each exhalation that we are indeed extending this gift to others, transforming the field of interdependence for all who live. And making the entirety of existence a bit more happy, a bit more infused with loving kindness and wisdom. And then we release all thoughts, all aspirations, all images, coming back to the body to rest with its sensations for a little while. And then introducing a tiny bit of movement to the body by, once again, rocking back and forth, stretching, reactivating our facial muscles, blinking our eyes open. And taking a tiny break just to stretch before our next meditation. So indeed, please feel free to stretch a tiny bit. And then we'll go into a practice of loving kindness proper, this time without an elaborate imagination-fueled exploration, but offering loving kindness to ourselves and then slowly starting to offer it to others, including our communities. So that will be the theme, and it will be a very straightforward, very traditional loving kindness practice in terms of how we do it. But once again, as we're preparing for it, we want to make sure there's some element of relaxation there, so for that we need to be physically comfortable, at least to a degree. And we also want to make sure there's an element of tenderness to it all. So one way to ensure that it's happening, in addition to all the things we'll do in the meditation itself, is to remind ourselves as we start the meditation that we're doing this out of the sense of caring for ourselves and others, because we want to be more warm-hearted with ourselves and then with everyone else. So it's on the basis of that I'm even doing this practice, that I'm even doing this retreat, that I'm exploring this mysterious thing called the Dharma, just because I want to be kind and gentle with myself and with the world. So in the spirit of that, finding a comfortable stationary position when we're ready, and then exploring the sensations of the body. If it feels right, we can do a few deeper in-breaths and out-breaths just to make sure that the body is becoming more comfortable in the meditation position. But that's not strictly necessary, and if we want to just go straight into the process of natural breathing where there's no contrivance, also totally fine. And then once again, exploring an abbreviated and performing an abbreviated body scan to make sure there's that element of stillness in the body, accompanied by the silence of our speech and the spaciousness of our mind. Starting with our feet and toes, and then exploring our entire lower half, the lower half of our body, from the waist down. And then our torso, our shoulders, and our upper arms. Then our forearms, our hands, our fingers, establishing a degree of stillness there, releasing all the restlessness that can be released. And finally, our face. Then, extending our awareness to the entirety of the body and noticing the natural rhythm of breathing there, these waves of tenderness that manifest as the waves of breathing, but that we can imbue with a quality of tenderness that is offered to every cell in our body, and by extension also to our mind, of course. And so holding ourselves in an attitude of warm-heartedness or tenderness or care by recognizing that we're both a deeply vulnerable being that just wants to be loved, just wants to be held, just wants to be respected, and so forth. And that we're also full of incredible potential that the Buddhist tradition refers to as our Buddha nature. The boundless, spacious luminosity deep within us. Indeed, why not hold this very being in a tender embrace, where we recognize the wonder of our own existence and the wonderful nature of our quest for happiness. And this is where loving kindness comes in, because we generate the wish, may I be happy, and have the causes of happiness. On the basis of a non-indifferent attitude towards our body and mind, we offer this wish to ourselves and to all of our components. And then we just rest with that wish, or if we want, we breathe life into this wish with every new exhalation, making sure that the wish never leaves our mind fully and that we're never fully, completely distracted, losing touch with loving kindness, therefore. No, may I be happy, or may I be happy and have the causes of happiness. Sending this wish powerfully into our system, into the depths of ourselves as an interdependently existing being, this interbraiding of mental and physical energy that we call ourselves. May everything contribute to happiness and genuine well-being. And then, without losing touch with ourselves, we can, on the periphery of our awareness, recognize that there are others in our communities that are just like us in terms of wanting to be happy and having the foundational luminous potential that we all possess. And we can think of the specific communities to which we belong, including the queer community. We can think of others around us right now on this retreat, also connected to this retreat by means of a recording. And we can also think of the community of our friends, our loved ones, and all the other communities that extend into infinity. Holding ourselves and others in tenderness, yes, and also in loving kindness, where we wish, may we be happy. Or may we be happy and have the causes of happiness. And this we is the opposite of a royal we. It's a we that includes eventually all sentient beings, including ourselves as this tiny bubble that we're started working with. So may we all be happy and have the causes of that happiness. Sending this wish out as a wave, as often as we want, or even with each exhalation. May we be happy. Eventually, as we expand this boundlessly, we can even start thinking, may all beings be happy and have the causes of happiness. Aspirationally, when we truly realize this ability to wish for everyone's happiness, that would be loving kindness on an immeasurable level. Immeasurable loving kindness proper. Then, gently releasing the images, the aspiration, resting in open awareness with no particular reference point, and then coming back to the body to ground ourselves in the sensations. Then, introducing a tiny bit of movement to the body, and very slowly and gently concluding the practice. Thank you. So we'll take our usual 15-minute break for bio needs, or just for strolling around and smiling with loving kindness at everyone around you. That's actually a traditional practice, sending loving kindness out through our eyes, or through our touch, or through a smile, or through our words. In this case, probably mostly our eyes and smiles, but that's pretty big already. And then in 15 minutes, we'll reconvene to talk about loving kindness a tiny bit more and then to move on to compassion. But in the meantime, I'll put on the 4 questions that we played with in our first meditation from this session. So if you want to take a picture or journal on them while there's still something left from meditation in your mind, you're very welcome to do so. So see you all soon. Enjoy the break. Thank you.